Yahushua, living water, Baruch haba B'Shem Yahuah. I sing out with praise to you. Your name is beautiful to me, my King. I sing out with praise to you. My heart desires to honor you, my God. I sing out with praise to you, Yahushua, living Torah, Baruch haba B'Shem Yahuah. Yahushua, living Torah, Baruch haba B'Shem Yahuah. I sing out with praise to you. Your name is beautiful to me, my King. I sing out with praise to you. My heart desires to honor you, my God. I sing out with praise to you, Yahushua, living Torah, Baruch haba B'Shem Yahuah. Baruch haba B'Shem Yahuah. Baruch haba B'Shem.
Hear, O Yisrael, Yahuah, our Elohim. Yahuah is one. And you shall love Yahuah your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And the second one is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Yahuah. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Glad you're all here. Happy, 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 happy. Everybody should be happy. It's Yom Shabbat, Yahuwah's rest day. Been a long week, but all's not lost. Today's the rest day of Yahuwah, and we get to spend time with Yahuwah. Yay! That's the best thing we could possibly do in life. I'd rather not be doing anything else. I would not like to be anywhere else other than right here, right now, spending time with Yahuwah. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Yahuwah. All right, so we got a pretty good little study here this evening. And this is kind of a deep dive subject, I guess we could call it that. Certainly has a lot of different opinions wrapped around it, a lot of controversy and quarreling about it. Especially throughout the religious sects. But what we'll be talking about this evening is free will or predestination. Do human beings truly, as humans, can we truly, fully understand Yahuwah's will? Versus free will or free choice, meaning us humans are fully responsible for our own actions and choices with no interference by anybody else, including Yahuwah. So I say we can understand this. I think Scripture is very clear. There's no contradictions. So there are and I'll admit there are some passages that will possibly get us scratching our head and wondering at times what's going on. But at the end of this study, I'm very hopeful that we're all going to have a better understanding of the truth about this subject. And I think if you all stick with me on this and keep in reserve, that like always, Yahuwah will open up our minds to understand the scriptures if we present ourselves in exegesis mindset to him and listen to his teaching, rather than rely on our own knowledge and past teachings of uninformed teachers. Okay? And so with that said, let me say hello to a few people and we'll get started on this very interesting and vital subject. It's all about knowing Yahuwah, right? Gaining more knowledge of Yahuwah. The more knowledge of Yahuwah, the better we know Yahuwah, the deeper relationship we can have with Yahuwah. And I think things will be much better for us in that case. Looks like my camera got knocked out of whack here just for somehow. Let me see if I can slide that over a little bit. Yeah. There we go. Okay. All right. So Levi Davis, number 1. Glad you're here, brother. Mr. 3 Jobs. You're number 2. Levi Davis beat you, but guess what? You beat Sandra, and I didn't think that was possible, so I apologize for telling you that was too big of a task for you, because you did beat her. And coming in number 3, nose to nose. Now, this was nose to nose. is Miss Sandra Renee Brunston. Glad you're here, sister. Glad you're here, Miss John. Glad you're here, Peggy Russell. Glad you're here, Lou White. Glad you're here, Phyllis White. Glad you're here, Phil Dickey. Glad you're here, Lee Huff. Isaiah Diaz. Glad you're here, brother, from El Paso, Texas. Rose Wright. Glad you're here. Valerie. Glad you're here, sister. Raul Koto. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shabbat. Now that's a smart person. He knows how, or she knows how, to keep track of the weekly Shabbat. It's just so simple. A child can do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Shabbat. But on the other hand, he hides these simple things from the wise of the world, from the scholars, from the theologians, from the smart people that use big words. Shala Somerville, glad you're here, sister. Christina, glad you're here. Laura Coker, glad you're here. Ladder Ring, glad you're here. Okay, there we go. All right, we got them trickling in, but we're going to go ahead and get started on this one. Hopefully, like I say, by the end of this study, we'll all have a much better understanding of what's going on, the overall picture of this carbon copied world we're living in. All right. So scripture says pretty clearly in Isaiah 46:10 that Yahuah has planned everything. And it also says before he created it, he also spoke it and is bringing it to pass and is doing it. Now, bringing it to pass means that everything that he planned, he's doing it exactly like he planned it to be. Okay, so we look at real briefly, and we're going to visit this. We're going to visit this topic or this passage here several times this evening. So we'll get familiar with this passage. But let's look at it real quickly here in Isaiah 46. I'm in the BYNV, by the way, if anybody's wondering. So Isaiah 46, 8 through 13 says, and listen to this very closely here now. Remember this and show yourselves men. Turn it back means repent. You transgressors, remember the former events of old. For I am all, and there is no one else. Elohim, and there is no one like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, which means he's declaring the end of his creation from the beginning of his creation, not of himself, for Yahuah is everlasting to everlasting. There's no beginning to Yahuah and there's no end to Yahuah. Everything is in Yahuah. He's the life giver. And from of old, that which has not yet been done, so the end has not come to his creation yet, saying, my counsel does stand. My counsel does stand. And all my delight I do. So this is Yahuah that did all this for his delight, for his entertainment purposes, because he wanted to, whether we like it or not. He's doing it exactly how he wanted to do it and how he foresaw it. Oh, yeah, you better believe Yahuah saw everything before he created anything. He probably named every grain of sand on the beaches of the world. He's probably got all the Shemayim stars, everything named. He probably has all the molecules, atoms named. There's no doubt in my mind that Yahuah can do whatever Yahuah wants. Calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a distant land. Indeed, now listen to this. Indeed, this is Yahuah talking. I have spoken it. I also bring it to pass. Who's bringing it to pass? He is. Is it just out there doing whatever it wants at its own free will, subject to nothing, no rules, no anything, just whatever happens, it happens spontaneously. Whatever happens, happens. No, it can't be, because he just said, I also bring it to pass. He spoke it and he's bringing it to pass. You ever wonder how long it took Yahuah to see all this stuff that's happening and what's going to happen into the future beyond infinity, between everlasting and everlasting? I wonder how long his mind thought of all these little teeny tiny precise details, even down to the very smallest particle or atom, and named it. You know, mind blowing, really. I also do it. So here he's saying he spoke it, he's bringing it to pass, he planned it, and he also doing it. Listen to me, you stubborn-hearted, who are far from righteousness. Funny, man wants Yahuah to be like them. They make Yahuah to be like them, humans do, and he's not. He laughs about that. Who are far from righteousness, I shall bring my righteousness near. Now, this is very interesting. Why? Because people think that we have free will to be obedient or be disobedient to Yahuah. And all this is, folks, is a perception. We have free perception. That's what we have. We just get to think we have that kind of power, but we do not. Because our righteousness is his righteousness in us. Here he says, I bring my righteousness near. Okay, and so when the Ruach HaKodesh immerses us and he indwells us, then we get to be righteous because of he who is indwelling us. That's why we become righteous and obedient, because of him. He's the only one that's righteous, not us. So what is it then? It's just a mere perception. We got the perception of free will. We'll get into that deeper here in a little bit. But I just want you to see that. I shall bring my righteousness near. It is not far off. Matter of fact, Yahuah is not a far off Elohim. He's not way out there somewhere up in a different dimension, sitting on the throne and ignoring us, turning away from us and ignoring us. No. Everything is in Yahuah, and Yahuah is in everything. Matter of fact, Yahuah is everything. And if you can accept it, Yahuah is the very breath you're breathing right now. And he returns your breath. He's as close as your breath. He's not far off. And my deliverance is not delayed. And I shall give deliverance in Zion, my esteem to Yesharel. So our righteousness is his. So it's very clear. We're going to revisit that passage. Don't worry. This is very, very, very clear, okay, that Yahuah has planned everything before he created it. He foresaw everything, and he planned it, and he spoke it, and is doing it. He's doing it all. And it's all being done for his delight, for his joy, for his entertainment, for his purposes, for his will. So if everything has been previewed beforehand by Yahuah, who saw everything before he created it and knew everyone and knew exactly, he knew you before he created anything, to the point where he knows what you're going to say before the thought even enters your mind. Get a grasp on that. Behold, the awesomeness, the power, the mightiness of Al Shaddai. So everything has been previewed beforehand, and there is no such thing as free will. All there can be then is Yahuah's will. Think about that. However, it does seem probable that us humans get to live out Yahuah's will, as though we have the choice between life and death, or good and evil. We have the choice to serve Yahuah or not. We get to live out Yahuah's will. It's nothing more than perceived free will. So I kind of feel sorry for Yahuah in a way when you begin to understand that nothing can happen without him knowing about it. And so you kind of wonder, wow, does that mean that he's not getting any joy out of his creation because he already knows what everybody's going to say and do and act and all this and that? And the answer is no, because he says he did it for his delight. So he's getting delight and joy out of it, in the sense that by allowing us to have perception of free will and in this little short lifespan of ours, and living Yahuah's will out in a way, in that way, he gets to enjoy and get delight out of his creation. Just think of everything that's going on this earth, in the Shemayim, in the heaven, in the universe, down to the micro scale, all the way up to the universe scale. And Yahuah knows everything about all of it. And so you imagine his mind, how powerful his thoughts are in his mind, to keep all that in his head, everything going on all the time at once in his head, and sustain it all. Wow, what a thought. So within this carbon-copied world then that we're living in, we get to experience life in this matrix or delusion, if you will, as though it is a reality. But it is not. Why isn't this a reality? Simply because it's temporary. Human life is like a vapor. Gone here 1 second, gone next second. Matter of fact, on Yahuah's existence, 1 day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is 1 day. Means that if you live to be 100 years old, you only live 2.4 hours on Yahuah's timeline. Very brief. And so even this 6,000 year world that we're in, the time we've been allotted to rule over ourselves on this carbon copy world, is very brief. Very, very brief. And it's temporary. So it's no more than a delusion. It's like a vapor. It's like a mirage. Okay? You see it, and then it's gone. Which means it is not real. It's just a mirage. It's just a matrix of sorts, a delusion. The true reality is Yahuah's will, and Yahuah engulfs everlasting life. So if in Yahuah's will, okay, it's everlasting. Okay, and so in this reality that exists because of Yahuah's will, which is everlasting life, okay, we get a chance to go there. And then once we get there, then who knows what we're going to be able to do on the level compared to where we're at now. But make no mistake about it, Yahuah knows. Yahuah knows. So no matter what, we're still going to be in Yahuah's will, okay? And which is Yahuah's will engulfs everlasting life. And now we're in reality. So then this perception of free will becomes vitally necessary in the mind of the flesh or for humanity while we walk in this dust. Otherwise, if we are told there is no free will and everything is planned and destined and we can do nothing about our fate, we can only imagine what the world would be like. Okay. Then we would have no need. People would feel there's no need for a relationship with Yahuah, because no matter what, his will is going to be done, right? And so they would ignore him. They would go and seek their own will. And their relationship with Yahuah in this world and the relationship with all of mankind would go down the drain. People would simply just go nuts. The world would be a horrible place, full of sin, way beyond the prelude, the pre-flood era, go way beyond that. People would just do everything that they desired because they would feel like there's nothing they can do about it anyway, you know. See what I'm saying? So it's important for people to believe that they do have free will. And that's why we're allowed to have that perception. It's kind of like this. If we knew that Yahuah was not going to annihilate anybody, just say in the end, Yahuah delivers all mankind, delivers everybody. Okay? And nobody is destroyed other than the Satan and the demons. Okay? What would mankind do if we had that knowledge? We would go crazy. The world would be full of sin like you've never even thought about. And so the perception that if you're disobedient and you're a sinner, you're going to be annihilated, thrown into the lake of fire, which is second death, where they're going to be weeping and gnashing of the teeth, then people straighten up. No, I don't want that. I better start being obedient. You see what I'm saying? In the perception, not in the reality. That's just an example. Okay, I'm not saying that's scriptural. I'm just saying that is an example. Okay. All right. So look, it's fairly simple. Either the universe and humans are simply playing out precisely according to a set plan with choice and or free will, with our free will being illusions. Okay. So it's either one or the other of this. Okay. Either the universe and humans are simply playing out the perception of free will according to a set plan that Yahuah has already planned and doing with the perception of free choice or free will being illusions, because they need to be for the fleshly mind to be able to function properly within their little short time frame of the lifespan. Okay. Or the definition of Yahuah being omniscient, meaning he knows all things, he's all knowing. Omnipotent and omniscient is wrong. And if that's the case, then we will need to redefine him in a different contrast. And so what we're saying here is if the definition of Yahuah being omnipotent, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, and omnipresent, everywhere, all the time, at once, is true, then free will cannot be true. It just cannot be. And if it is, we need to redefine the definition of Yahuah, because it's in contrast. Free will and predestination is in contrast. So, yes, it is true that Yahuah created humans in his own image, in his own likeness, his own, and with a shared essence with him, shared his essence with humans, because he wanted a relationship with another sovereign person. The sad part is that Yahuah is omnipotent, and so after seeing all and knowing all, he animated his thoughts into his creation. So although Yahuah knows what we will do and say beforehand, even before the thought comes into our mind, by allowing us to perceive free will of our own, in a way, he gets to enjoy spontaneous, unpredicted events through us. All right, so let's go ahead and get into scripture here a little bit. We'll look at both sides. Mainly, we're going to look into Yahuah as well, because that's what's most important. But we will cover both sides and hopefully clear up a little bit of what's going on here. This is not a study for us to be able to point fingers and say who's right and who's wrong here, okay? But this is a study for us to increase our knowledge of Yahuah and to get to know Yahuah better so we can have a closer walk with him. Okay, so let's just not miscue what this study is about. All right, so let's look at Genesis 45. We'll go ahead and turn to scripture now. So Genesis 45, 1 through 8 says, "And Joseph was unable to restrain himself before all those who stood by him. And he called out, 'Have everyone gone out from me? Have everybody go out from me.' So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers." I think we all know this story. "And he wept aloud, and the Mitzrites in the house of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, 'I am Yusuf. Is my father still alive?' But his brothers were unable to answer him, for they trembled before him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, 'Please come near to me.' And when they came near, he said, 'I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Mitzrayim. And now do not be grieved nor displeased with yourselves, because you sold me here. For Elohim sent me before you to preserve life. For 2 years now, the scarcity of food has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there is neither plowing nor harvesting. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the Eretz, and to give life to you by a great escape. So then, you did not send me here, but Elohim. And he has sent me for a father to Pharaoh, and master of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Mitzrayim. So here we see now that Joseph is making it known to his brothers who sold him into slavery, to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt and sold him to an Egyptian, that, it's not your fault, man. You guys didn't do this. This was the will of Yahuah. You see, so he's letting them know you couldn't have done anything different if you wanted to, man. Otherwise, you would have. You did what you did because it was the will of Yahuah. It was predestined. It was pre-planned. Yahuah spoke it, and Yahuah brought it to pass. Just like we read in Isaiah 46:10. See that? So Joseph understood this for sure, or he wouldn't have spoke like that. We can go and pick that back up in Genesis 50. And it says in Genesis 50:14 through 26 says, and after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Mitzrayim, he and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury his father. And when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph hates us and pays us back all the evil which we did to him? And they sent word to Joseph, saying, before your father died, he commanded, saying, this is what you are to say to Joseph. I beg you, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. So even though he explained this to them, that it wasn't their fault, it was Yahuah who sold him into bondage, not them, they're not getting it, obviously. Okay. And now they're lying, making up stories to try to save themselves. Now they're afraid, still trembling and afraid of him, even though he told them, hey, it ain't your fault, man. This Yahuah's will. And it wasn't you that did this. It was Yahuah. I guess they didn't catch that. Like many people today. You show them scripture all day long. They just don't catch it. They see the ball flying, but they don't catch the ball. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him, and his brothers also went and fell down before his face. And they said, see, we are your servants. And Joseph said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of Elohim? And you intended evil against me, but Elohim intended it for good, in order to do it as it is this day, to keep a great many people alive. You see that? So he's telling them again, look, man, am I in the place of Elohim? This is not my will. Everything that's happening is Yahuah's will. You intended evil against me. If it was your will, who knows what would have happened to me? But it wasn't your will. It was Yahuah's will. He's the one that sold me and brought me here. And because he intended it for good. Wow, man. How powerful is that? So here now, whose will was done here, folks? Was it Joseph's brother's will? Or was it Yahuah's will? It was Yahuah's will. because Joseph's brothers intended evil upon their brother Joseph, but Elohim intended it for good, to save the life of many people. Wow. Good thing we're all living under Yahuwah's will and not our perceived free will. We'd all be in trouble. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. There's no use in reading on that, but we'll just go look at Exodus 9. Go to Exodus 9:13 through 18 here. It says, and Yahuwah said to Moses, rise early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh, and say to him, thus said Yahuwah Elohim of the Hebrews, let my people go, so that they serve me. For at this time I am sending all my plagues onto your heart, and on your servants, and on your people, so that you know that there is no one like me in all the Eretz. Now, if I had stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, then you would have been cut off from the Eretz. And for this reason, I have raised you up in order to show you my power, and in order to declare my name in all the Eretz. You still exalt yourself against my people, in that you do not let them go. See, tomorrow about this time, I am causing very heavy hail to rain down, such as has not been seen in Mitzrayim from this day of its founding until now. So here Yahuwah is clearly telling the Pharaoh, the reason you're not letting my people go is because of my will. I'm not going to you're not going to let my people go, because I raised you up not to let my people go, so that you can I can show you my power in order to declare my name in all the Eretz. So Pharaoh couldn't let them go if he wanted to. Matter of fact, he did try to. And then after the next day, when he saw all the pestilence and all the plagues were gone, what did he do? He didn't let them go. He went back on his word. And matter of fact, he said, now you're going to make bricks without straw. And so, hey, Yahuwah knew he wasn't going to let them people go. Pharaoh thought he had the power and the free will to do it, to let them go, but he didn't. That's why he did not, because it wasn't Yahuwah's will. You see that? So Pharaoh's predestination was not to let the people go in order for Yahuwah to show his power, in order for him to declare his name in all the Eretz. That's very powerful stuff, man. So it's pretty clear. Pharaoh was born to do what he was doing, and he couldn't do anything other than what he was doing. If he could have, he probably would have, if all those plagues and everything coming on him. But he could not. The only thing he could do was what Yahuwah had already spoken and planned. And Yahuwah brought it to pass. Exactly how he saw it, how he planned it, and how he created it to be. So is that free will? No, it's not. Okay. Let's look at Deuteronomy 6 and 7. For you are a set apart people to Yahuwah your Elohim. Yahuwah your Elohim has chosen you to be a people for himself. Did you hear that? Yahuwah your Elohim has chosen you to be a people for himself. Did they choose Yahuwah? No, he chose them. So if he chose them, then everything that came about in their lives was because he planned it and brought it to pass. They had to do everything exactly what he wanted them, how he wanted it to be done. There can't be there can't be free will or a spontaneous whatever happens type thing and all this be written down in scripture, especially prophecy. Prophecy itself proves that everything is being done according to Yahuwah's will. Otherwise, look at all the different things that could happen to make that not happen. And then Yahuwah wouldn't know about it? Keep that in mind as well. If man truly had free will to do whatever he wanted, whatever happens, happens, then Yahuwah wouldn't know what everybody was going to say before that thought even came in their mind to say it. How would he know? If they were allowed to do anything they wanted, then that means he had no knowledge of it. He's just sitting back watching what they do and see what would happen and then record it afterwards, 20/20 hindsight. But that ain't what's going on here, brother, sisters. Ain't happening. Yahuwah knows exactly what they're going to do way before they do it. That's what prophecy is. And since Scripture's 25% prophecy, there's a whole lot of Yahuwah's free will here. Yahuwah did not set his love on you nor choose you because you were more numerous than any other people, for you were the least of all the peoples. So there you go. He shed his love on them and he chose them. Okay? There's nothing they could do about it. His will, he chose them, his will be going to be done. There's nothing they can do. Okay. All right. Now, to be fair, I'm going to go the other route now. And just a little bit where people say, no. Humans have free will. We have the right to choose. We have the right to be obedient or disobedient. We have the right to be a sinner or not a sinner. We have the right to choose life or choose death. We have the right to do whatever we want to do. Okay. And I understand the need for the perception of free will. I really do. But what we got to understand here, folks, is Yahuwah already knew who would choose life and who would choose death before he created anybody. He already knew it. So when he gave them the choice to choose life or death, he already knew who was going to choose life and who was going to choose death. But guess what he also knew? He knew that he was going to choose life for them and bring them into everlasting life with him. Otherwise, they could have all chose death. Nobody would have went into eternity with him. I mean, just think about it. What did they want to do? They all wanted to go, so they were grumbling and complaining and wanted to go back to Mitzrayim. But they didn't, for some reason, because it wasn't Yahuwah's will for them to go back to Mitzrayim. It was their will, but it wasn't his will. So it didn't happen. It didn't come to pass. Okay. He already knew they were going to do that. Matter of fact, I'll go as far as saying that Yahuwah is so great and awesome that he knew everybody and everybody agreed to his will before he created them. And so we're just living out what we agreed to beforehand. Well, that gets your mind working, right? It also shows you the power of Yahuwah. and who you're messing with. Like I said, men always wants to make Yahuah like them. And he is nothing like us at all. So let's look at it. Deuteronomy 30. Deuteronomy 30 says, and it shall be, and listen to that, and it shall be, when all these words come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among all the Gentiles, where Yahuah your Elohim drives you, and shall turn back to Yahuah your Elohim and obey his voice, according to all that I have commanded you today, with all your heart and with all your being, you and your children, then Yahuah your Elohim shall turn back your captivity, and shall have compassion on you, and he shall turn back and gather you from all the peoples where Yahuah your Elohim has scattered you. Notice what he says, and it shall be. That means he ordained it. That means he spoke it. That means he's going to bring that to pass. And there's nothing you can do about it. It shall be. That's out of the mouth of Yahuah. If any of you are driven out of the farthest parts under the Shemayim, from there Yahuah your Elohim does gather you. And from there he does take you, and Yahuah your Elohim shall bring you to the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. And he shall do good to you and increase you more than your fathers. And Yahuah your Elohim shall circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed, to love Yahuah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, so that you might live. See, that's so you might live. So he's causing all this to happen so that we might live. See that? Otherwise, I'm of the opinion we'd all choose death. Crazy human beings are. And Yahuah your Elohim shall be put all these curses on your enemies and on all those who hate you, who persecute you. And you shall turn back and obey the voice of Yahuah and do all his commands, which I command you today. This is prediction. He's telling them what's going to happen. And it shall be. That's predestination, folks. You can't slice the pie any other way. This is going to happen. And Yahuah your Elohim shall make you have excess in all the work of your hand, in the fruit of your body, in the fruit of your livestock, and in the fruit of your ground, for good. And Yahuah turns back to rejoice over you for good, as he rejoiced over your fathers. If you obey the voice of Yahuah your Elohim to guard his commands and his laws, which are written in this book of the Torah, if you turn back to Yahuah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, for this command which I am commanding you today, it is not too hard for you, nor is it far off. It is not in the Shemayim to say, who shall ascend into the Shemayim for us and bring it to us and cause us to hear it, so that we do it. Nor is it beyond the sea to say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it to us and cause us to hear it, so that we do it. For the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart, to do it. See, I have set before you today life and good, and death and evil. In that I am commanding you today to love Yahuah your Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to guard his commands and his laws and his right rulings, and you shall live and increase. And Yahuah your Elohim shall bless you in the land which you go to possess. But if your heart turns away and you do not obey, and shall be drawn away, and shall bow down to other mighty ones and serve them, I have declared to you today that you shall certainly perish. You shall not prolong your yamam in the land which you are passing over the Jordan to enter and possess. I have called the Shemaim and the Eretz as witnesses today against you. I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Now listen to this. Therefore, you shall choose life. Predestined to choose life, man. He said, you're going to choose life. He's not going to let everybody choose death and his sovereign people he wants with him in everlasting life to perish. He said, you will choose life. He says, therefore you shall choose life. So Yahuah obviously already knew who would choose life and who would perish, who would choose death and evil. Okay? And it's obviously Yahuah's will for those who has been predestined to choose life and good to be with him for everlasting life. Because when he says, therefore you shall choose life, he's not giving you a choice to choose evil, is he? Who's he speaking to? Obviously, his chosen, his election. Those who he's going to deliver and bring into everlasting life with him into the reality. So that you live, both you and your seed, to love Yahuah, your Elohim, to obey his voice and to cling to him. For he is your life and the length of your days, to dwell in the land which Yahuah swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and Jacob, to give them. See that? He says, therefore you shall choose life, man. He chose life for you. You don't get to choose it. It's just a perception of free will. That's all. It looks like in the fleshly realm, in this carbon copy world, that people are getting to choose life or death. But really, Yahuah has already chosen who's going to live and who's going to die. He already knows, which means he's already planned it and he's bringing it to pass. If he knows it, then it can't be free will. Just running rampant, going crazy, doing whatever happens. Whatever happens, happens, man. Ain't nothing like that going on. Yahuah is not the author of confusion and chaos. So this is pretty clear. They like to point to this and see you have a choice of life and death, so it has to be free will. No, therefore you shall choose life. Yahuah knows who are his. The election happened before the foundations of the earth. You see that? So if Yahuah already knew beforehand, then, before he created anything, who would choose life and who would choose death, then why do we have the perception of free choice or free will? Like I said earlier, because it is necessary while we are in the flesh. Otherwise, if our fleshly mind understood that everything's destiny or predestined here, and there is not free will, then we would all go crazy. No, there'd be no longer would there be a need to seek Yahuah and repent and forgive anybody. There'd be no need for any of that. We would simply just do it what we wanted to do, the way we wanted to do it. We would go nuts. We would be huge sinners. We would be worse than ever. Sin would run rampant all over the earth like it never has been, if people actually understood that. Because they would say, what's the use? And we're going to get an example of that when we get to Romans 9. You know, if it's predestination, why bother? Let's just go do what we do, and Yahuah will sort it out in the end. He'll sort it all out, and we either live or die. Who cares? Let's just go nuts. But that's not what Yahuah foresaw. That's not what you agreed to with him before he created you. You better believe he had a conversation with you before he created you. And you agreed to it, whether you would choose life or death. He already knows. Some people might say, "Ooh, that's too much for me. I can't wrap my mind around that." Well, you don't really need to. All you need to do is understand the power of Yahuah and who you're messing with, and fear Him. That's the best thing you could do. Quit messing around trying to make Him like a man, trying to make Him like us, because He's nothing like us. Nothing like us. All right. Let's move on here to, let's look at Isaiah 45, 5 through 7. Listen to this. You have not, for the sake of Yaakov, my servant, and of Israel, my chosen, see, my chosen, I also call you by your name. I give you a title, though you have not known me. I am Yahuah, and there is none else. There is no Elohim besides me. I gird you, though you have not known me, so that they know from the rising of the sun to its setting that there is none but me. I am Yahuah, and there is none else, forming light and creating darkness, making peace and creating evil. I, Yahuah, do all these. So there you go. So people say, "Oh, we have free choice because we're allowed to choose life and good, or death and evil." No, you don't. Yahuah created darkness. He created evil. Therefore, He knew who were going to be evil. If He created the evil, that means He created the evil person, the person who wanted to be evil. He created that person to be evil, just like He created Pharaoh and brought Pharaoh up so that he could show his power and spread His name out through the Eretz. So we're going to learn later on that He formed the different vessels, the vessels of the treasured possession, a valuable vessel, and He also created the common vessel, the vessel you made for destruction, to throw away, to toss in the trash can. Okay? And so, therefore, He knew who would choose life and good and who would choose death and evil, good and evil. The perceived notion of free will is much needed, okay? But the truth is, folks, everything's Yahuwah's will. He already had all this planned out before any of us were born. He knew us before He created anything, and we accepted it. We agreed to whatever is going to happen in our very short lifespan before He created it. He's not cruel. He's awesome, man. He's a very, very fair, compassionate, merciful Elohim. You got to understand who He is. And He's pure love. And He's pure truth. All right. So let's move on to Jeremiah 1:4. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 4 says, "Now the word of Yahuwah came to me." This is Jeremiah talking, saying, "Before I formed you in the belly, I knew you. And before you came out of the womb, I did set you apart. I appointed you a prophet to nations." So there you go. Yirmiyahu's life was already planned out before he was even conceived. So did Jeremiah have a choice to be a prophet to the nations? No. He simply had to live it because it was Yahuwah has already predestined it. And he had no choice but to do it and to say every little exact word, had every thought, every action in his life was already planned out by Yahuah. And not only planned out by Yahuah, but Yahuah was doing it. You don't think Yahuah's working in your life, man? Yahuah's everything. If we can get that thought process in our little brain that Yahuwah is everything, we can start to understand why Yahuwah's will be done. Jeremiah had no choice. He had to do exactly what Yahuwah had predestined for his life. All right, so let's look at Job. Go to Job 38. Then Yahuwah answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now gird up your loins like a man, and I ask you, and you answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earths? Declare if you have understanding. Who set its measurements, if you know? Or who stretched the line upon it? Upon what were its foundations sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy? Or who enclosed the sea with doors, when it burst forth and came from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment, and thick darkness its swaddling band, and assigned for it my law, and set bars and doors, and said, this far you have come, but no farther. And here your proud waves stop. Have you ever commanded the morning, and caused the dawn to know its place? To take hold of the ends of the earths, and the wrong be shaking out of it? It is changed like clay under a seal, and they stand out like a robe. And their light is withheld from the wrong, and the arm lifted up is broken, and their light is withheld from the wrong. They don't sound like they got much choice there. Have you come to the sources of the sea, or have you walked about in the recesses of the deep? Were the gates of the death revealed to you? Or have you seen the gates of the shadow of death? Have you understood the breath of the earths? Declare it if you know it all. Okay, so that's pretty powerful, man. So that's you basically saying, it's all me. It's all about me. I do it all. So go ahead and finish reading that chapter. It's really fascinating, really, the book of Job, especially 38 to the end. But I don't want to take that much time to read that, but read it yourself and get a chance. But look over at Job 40, 1 through 4. It says, and Yahuwah answered Job and said, should a reprover, that's somebody who disputes knowledge or corrects or tries to correct or judge what somebody else is saying to be true or not, right? Should a reprover contend with the Almighty? Let him who reproves Yahuwah answer it. I'm going to say no. And Yahuwah or Job answered Yahuwah and said, see, I am insignificant. What would I answer you? I lay my hand over my mouth. Maybe I shouldn't have answered. Let's go over and look at Job 42. And Job answered Yahuah and said, 42:1. So here Job answered Yahuah. I mean, he just keeps going on and on and on and blowing Job's mind with all these things that obviously a man is not going to know, right? And so after he gets done blowing Job's mind with all these questions, basically, and then Job answered Yahuah and said, you know that you are able to do all, and that no purpose is withheld from you. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore, I declared, but I did not understand things too. Marvelous for me, which I did not know. So he's answering Yahuwah's question. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Yes, he's repeating Yahuwah's question, and now he's answering that question. Therefore, I declared, but I did not understand things too marvelous for me, which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. I ask you, then would you make it known to me? Now he's wanting Yahuwah to make it known to him, give him some answers. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you. Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. Very powerful stuff, man. So here Job understood that Yahuwah is everything. Then, of course, Yahuwah blesses him and gives everything back to him. Down here in 12, 42:12. And Yahuwah blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, 1,000 female donkeys. And he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he called the name of the first Yemimah, and the name of the second Quetzia, and the name of the third Quirin Hapuk. And in all the land were found no women so pretty as the daughters of Job. And their father gave them inheritance among their brothers. And Job lived 140 years and saw his children and grandchildren for 4 generations. And Job died old and full of days. And so this is just as a side note, shows you that women were allowed to inherit land. Okay. We also see this in Numbers as well. Numbers 27, 1 through 11. There were 5 daughters of Zelophehad, and they inherited their father's land, but they could not marry outside of the tribe, and the land had to stay within the tribe, territory of that tribe. So they could only marry a man from their father's tribe. But the 5 girls did inherit the father's land because he had no sons. So if you're interested in that, it's in Numbers 27, 1 through 11. Just side note there. I don't want to get off on a tangent and too much on that. Okay, so let's look over here then at John 6. We'll go into the Nazarene writings here a little bit now. So John 6:37 says, all that the Father gives me shall come to me, and the one who comes to me I shall by no means cast out. Because I have come down out of the heaven, not to do my own desire or will. Desire or will, you place will there, same thing. But the desire or will of him who sent me. So even Yahusha was admitting to doing the will of the Father, not his own will, but Yahuwah's will. And so the Lamb of Yahuwah knew that he didn't have his own will to choose what he had to do exactly what Yahuwah's will was, and he knew that. He understood that. This is the human side of Yahusha's nature speaking here. And so this is the desire or the will of the Father who sent me, that all he has given me I should not lose of it, but should raise it in the last yamam. You see that? So it's all predestined who he's going to raise and who's going to give an everlasting life, eternal life. Predestined, man. He gave them to him. So he must know who they are. And so people might be thinking, oh, well, somebody can be saved and then lose their salvation. That's true. But that doesn't mean it was their will to go off and be a sinner and lose their salvation. That means Yahuah had already predestined that beforehand. He knew that they would fall away and lose their salvation. They're just doing what he knew. So then some might say, well, does that mean that how about the ones that their name was put in the Lamb's Book of Life before the foundations of the world? Okay, does that mean that their name's now blotted out if they turn into a sinner, if their name was in there and then their name can be removed or blotted out? And they lost their place in the Lamb's Book of Life for the foundation of the world? How can that be if it's predestined? Because he knew that they were going to fall away and be blotted out. That's all. Why? He set that situation up for a purpose. To esteem himself, to esteem others, whatever it was, he set that situation up for a purpose. And he knew that that's how that would play out, that their name would be blotted out of the books of the Lamb alive before he created anything. Because there's a purpose behind what he did. That's all. It's not that they got free will. Again, it's fulfilling Yahuwah's desire or his will. And this is the desire or will of him who sent me, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him should possess everlasting life. And I shall raise him in the last yamam. See that? Therefore, so it's his will, man. Therefore, the Yehudim were grumbling against him because he said, I am the bread of life which comes down out of the heaven. And they said, is not this Yahusha, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it then that he says, I have come down out of the heaven? Then Yahusha answered and said to them, do not grumble with one another. No one is able to come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him. And I shall raise him in the last yamam. So there you go. So you can't go to him. You can't be drawn in unless the Father draws him. So there's this, no one is able to. That means it's impossible, basically. It has to be Yahuah, unless the Father who sent me draws him. It's Yahuwah's choice, not ours. I know. Some people say, well, I felt sorry for you, man. He knows everything, so nothing's joyful, nothing's a surprise, nothing's eventful. Now, how can he enjoy this? Well, believe me, he does, because Scripture says so. He did it for his delight, for his purposes, for his joy. Okay? Yeah, you got to understand the mind of Yahuah. We see this, we're only seeing in this little time bracket this temporary life that's going on around us. And so the way we conceive it or perceive it, okay, is incorrect. It's false. It's a delusion or an illusion. Okay? Yahuah sees beyond it. Okay? So his delight, his joy in seeing all these things that he planned come to pass is that he's doing it all. And so therefore he gets experience the perception of free will within this delusion. But even deeper than that, he understands what's going to happen in the eternal reign. So he knows what he has planned for us in the eternal reign, and that brings him great joy and great happiness because He can't wait to get there with us in order to give us the things that He planned out to give us in eternal reign. Things that we can't even fathom. Our minds can't even think about it. It's so out there beyond our capability of imagination even. And He knows, and He brings Him delight and joy to think about these, they have no idea what I'm going to do for them after this delusion's gone. And so He gets joy in that as well. Why? Because He's a giver. Yahuah is the life giver. He's the one that gives everything. And He gets great delight in doing so. Okay, the more we become like Yahuah, the more we become a giver as well, instead of a receiver. Right now, you may be just a receiver. You may be enjoying the blessings of Yahuah coming down in your life. In any form whatsoever. Okay? But sooner or later, you're going to be transformed in the knowledge of Yahuah and understand that it's better to be a giver than a receiver. So then you start duplicating and mimicking your Heavenly Father, and you become a giver like Him. He gives you, you give it, pass it on. I don't want that. I'm going to give it to this person. Well, take this then. Okay, thank you. I'm going to give it to this person. You become a giver like Yahuah, and your whole life changes. You enter into the spiritual realm where truth and love resides. Okay, so it has been written in the prophets and that they shall be taught by Yahuah. Everyone then who has heard from the Father and learned comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except he who is from Elohim. He has seen the Father. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me possesses everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the desert and they died. This is the bread which comes down out of the heaven so that anyone might eat of it and not die. I am the living bread which came down from out of the heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And indeed, the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the life of the world. The Yehudim therefore were striving with one another, saying, how is this one able to give us his flesh to eat? Yahushua therefore said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the son of Adam and drink his blood, you possess no life in yourself. No life in yourselves. So that means you can't choose life. You possess no life in yourself unless you eat the flesh of the son of Adam and drink his blood. So where's the choice between good life and death? Yeah, he chose you. You didn't choose him. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood possesses everlasting life, and I shall raise him in the last day. Look at how much he keeps saying that in this chapter. I will raise him in the last day. Who? Who's going to raise him? Yahuah. That's who. Yahuah is everything. He's even the resurrection, man. He resurrected his own body. For my flesh is truly food, and my blood is truly drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood stays in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so he who feeds on me shall live because of me. Speaking by him being the body of Yahuah. This is the bread which came down out of the heaven, not as your fathers ate the manna and died. He who eats this bread shall live forever. He said this in a congregation, teaching in Capharnaum. Therefore, many of his pupils, having heard this, said, this word is hard. Who is able to understand it? Who is able to hear it? But Yahushua, knowing within himself that his pupils were grumbling about this, said to them, does this make you stumble? What if you see the son of Adam going up where he was before? This means he pre-existed incarnation. For sure. if he was there before. It is the Ruach that gives life. The flesh does not profit at all. The words that I speak to you are Ruach in our life. Why? Because the Ruach is reality. It's everlasting. The flesh is temporary. It's an illusion. It's a delusion. It's not real. It's going to perish. But there are some of you who do not believe. For Yahushua knew from the beginning who they were who did not believe and who would deliver him up. And he said, because of this, I have said to you that no one is able to come to me unless it has been given to him by my Father. So obviously then we can't choose him. Obviously then he said, when he says he knew from the beginning who they were that did not believe, he knew who are his, who was chosen beforehand. Nothing you can do, man. You can be in the book of life and be removed from it, your name blotted out in the end. Only Yahuah knows. We have no free choice of anything. You can think, oh, I'm going to be delivered because I obey the 10 Commandments, and so don't. I know if sure he breaks the Sabbath. Okay? You don't know what's going to happen at the end. You don't know if Yahushua appointed them everlasting life before he created anything or not. So therefore, you don't know everything is going to play out, what's going to happen, why maybe Yahuwah chooses them and why he doesn't choose you. You don't know. You just think you know. You think you got that free will that you can earn your way into salvation, or you can choose death and lose your salvation. And I got news for you. If Yahuwah chose you to live, there ain't no way you're going to die. It don't matter. If you're good through your entire life, or you're bad through most of your life, and then you turn good, it don't matter if you're good all the way through to the very end, then you turn bad and he blots your name out of the book of life. Whatever. He knew what's going to happen beforehand. He knew every situation, every little detail of everybody's life and how it would all play out from the beginning to the end of his creation. Nothing we can do. John 17:5 says, and now esteem me with yourself, Father, with the esteem which I had with you before the world was. So obviously then before the world was, Yahushua existed. He pre-existed that incarnation. We know that because everything was created through him. So he was the light. He was Yahuwah's body of light, and everything was created through him. With the esteem which I had with you before the world was, speaking of as his body of light. So if the lamb was slain before the foundations of the world, and he was esteemed with Yahuwah, okay, before the beginning of creation, and the lamb was slain before the foundations of the world, it's telling me that he knew each and every single one of us in order to cover us with the blood of the lamb before he created anything else, in order for us to be appointed everlasting life and to believe in the power of that blood, the lamb that was slain before the foundations of the world. Is that predestination or what? I'd say it is at its best. That's predestination at its best right there. If you can wrap your mind around that one, you just hit a home run. Let's look at John 17:24. John 17:24 says, Father, I desire that those whom you have given me might be with me where I am, so that they see my esteem which you have given me, because you loved me before the foundation of the world. There you go. It's not just he loved the thought of him, and but he wouldn't come until the fullness of time. Okay, it said he knew him before the foundations of the world. He loved him before the foundations of the world. It was his body of light. Of course, he loved himself, his own body. So look at 1 Peter real quick. Jump off of this real quick. I don't want to go on a tangent, but let's look at 1 Peter 1:20. 1 Peter 1:20 says, foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes, who through him believe in Elohim, who raised him from the dead and gave him esteem, so that your belief and expectation are in Elohim. See, there you go. All right, so he definitely knew him beforehand, okay? It's pretty clear right there. I don't see it. You can't get that mixed up. All right, so let's go back over here to Luke. Look at Luke 11, verse 43. Woe to you, Prushim, because you love the best seats in the congregation, and the greetings in the marketplaces. Woe to you, scribes and Prushim, hypocrites, because you are like the unseen tombs. The men walking over them do not know. And one of those learned in the Torah answering said to him, Teacher, when you say this, you insult us too. And he said, Woe to you also, you learned in the Torah, because you load men with burdens hard to bear, and you yourselves do not touch the burdens with one of your fingers. Woe to you, because you built the tombs of the prophets, and your fathers killed them. So you bear witness that you approve of the works of your fathers, because they indeed killed them, and you built their tombs. And because of this, the wisdom of Elohim said, I shall send them prophets and emissaries, and some of them they shall kill and persecute, so that the blood of all the prophets which was shed from the foundation of the world shall be required of this generation. From the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who perished between the altar and the temple. Yea, I say to you, it shall be required of this generation. Woe to you, learned in the Torah, because you took away the key of knowledge. You did not enter in yourselves, and those who were in entering in you hindered. And as he was saying this to them, the scribes and the Pharisees began to oppose him fiercely and to draw him out on many subjects, watching him and seeking to catch him in whatever he says, so as to accuse him. So there you go. So the blood of the prophets, which was shed from the foundation of the world. Are you starting to see the bigger picture here? Are you seeing that Yahuah saw every little tiny detail of everything he was going to do from everlasting to everlasting? And even within this delusion, this carbon-copied world, everything was going to happen before he created anything. So his mind, and this is just me talking now, his mind must have saw all this as though he was watching a movie in great detail, paying attention to every little tiny thing in each frame, and animated it all before he brought the delusion in to play it, to do it all, so it all would pass. Must have, man. Incredible. It's just incredible to think that everybody agreed to their life beforehand, and then they get to go play it out in some perceived notion of free will is mind-blowing stuff. I don't know if our minds can wrap around that or not, but it has to be because of statements like this. So that the blood of all the prophets which was shed from the foundation of the world shall be required of this generation. All right, Acts 4:23, Acts 4:23, especially verses 27 and 28 here, but we'll start in 23. Says, and having been released, they went to their own people and reported all that chief priests and elders said to them. And having heard that, they lifted up their voice to Elohim with one mind and said, Yahuah, you are Elohim, who made the heaven and the earths and the sea and all that is in them, who by the mouth of your servant Daud have said, why did the nations rage and the people plot in vain? See, it's in vain. Because it's not going to matter what they do. It was predestined for them to do what they're doing. And the outcome is going to be Yahuwah's will anyway. It's just in vain. They're doing it in vain. It's not going to matter what they do. They were born to do exactly what they're doing. And if they could do anything else but that, they would. But they can't. Because it was predestined for them to do exactly what they're doing. They think they're changing things. They think they can change things by raging and plotting and trying to kill Yahusha, kill Elazar, do all these things. And they're going to change their destiny, change the history of the world. But they don't have that kind of power. They think Yahuwah's like them. And he's not. He's already got that all figured out what they're going to do before they even do it. Before the thought even comes into their mind, he knows what they're going to say. The sovereigns of the Eretz stood up, and the rulers were gathered together against Yahuah and against his Mashiach. For truly in this city there were gathered together against you your set apart servant, Yahusha, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, with the nations and the people of Israel, to do whatever your hand and your purpose decided before to be done. Wow. We better read that one again, because that kind of shook my brain. Let's read that again. Acts 4, verses 27 and 28. For truly in this city there were gathered together against your set-apart servant Yahusha, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate. He anointed both of them with the nations and the people of Israel, all those people, the whole world, the population of the world, really, to do whatever your hand and your purpose decided before to be done. They're doing exactly what he decided beforehand, before he even created anything. They have no choice. They're doing exactly what they were born to do. See that? Does that sound like free will? It sounds like they had to do what they had to do, what they were born to do, to me. Look at Acts 13:48. Acts 13:48 says, and when the nations heard this, they were glad and praised the word of Yahuah. And as many as had been appointed to everlasting life believed. See that? So you can't believe unless you're appointed to believe. You have to be appointed to everlasting life to believe. Okay, that's what it just said. And as many as had been appointed to everlasting life believed. Okay, so when we look at passages like John 12:37, let me go there real quick. John 12:37. It says, but though he had done so many signs before them, they did not believe in him. You see that? So he did all these signs. He healed the blind, a man blind from birth, gave him sight. The deaf, the dumb, healed them all. Paralytics, people crippled, brought them up so they could walk. Raised the dead, people that died, raised them up. He did all these miracles, cured them of leprosy, all these things. Okay? Yet they did not believe. Why didn't they believe after they saw him do all those miracles that no man could do? Nobody could do any of those except Yahuah. He's the only one that could perform those signs and miracles and wonders. So why didn't they believe that he was Yahuah? If only Yahuah could do those things, it's because of what it says right here in Acts 13:48. And as many as had been appointed to everlasting life believed. So it wouldn't matter if you saw somebody you know raised up from the grave. If you are not appointed to everlasting life, you're still not going to believe. It's not going to do you any good at all. And if you are one of those who have been appointed to everlasting life, you don't need to see somebody raised from the dead to believe. You only need to hear the words of Yahuah spoken in your ear, and you will recognize the voice of your master shepherd, and you'll come running. And you will believe because you'll know that it's him. You only have to see the miracles. You only need to hear his words. These people, not only they did not believe because of his words, and he says, well, if you don't believe because of my words, at least believe because of all these miracles I'm doing that no one else could do but Yahuah. But they still didn't believe. They didn't believe because of his words. They didn't believe because of the miracles and the signs. Why? Because what it says right here in Acts 13:48. And as many as had been appointed to everlasting life believed. So you have to be appointed before the foundations of the world, chosen for everlasting life in order to believe. Belief is not something we get to do. A lot of people try to teach that belief is free will. Oh, we get to believe or not to believe. We have the choice whether to believe or not to believe. No, you don't. Belief is a gift from Yahuah. Straight up gift, man. He gives you the gift of belief, then you believe. And he's not going to give you that gift of belief unless you are appointed to everlasting life before the foundations of the world. Go to Ephesians 2:8. I know a lot of you are saying, I don't believe that. All right, well, let's look at it then. Ephesians 2:8. Ephesians chapter 2:8 says, for by favor you have been delivered through belief. And that not of yourselves. It is the gift of Yahuah. It is not by works, so that no one should boast. So this is speaking about belief being a gift. It's clear. For by favor you have been delivered through belief, and that is not of yourselves. It is the gift of Yahuah. So it's Yahuwah's gift to you to believe because you were appointed to everlasting life, just like Acts 13:48 said. Now, in order to confirm that belief is a gift, we simply need to go to 1 Corinthians 12:9. So go to 1 Corinthians 12:9. And we can see that it is a gift. We should probably back up here so you can see it in 12:4. And there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Ruach. So the same Ruach HaKodesh gives you all the gifts. Only one Ruach, but there's different gifts. Okay? But by the same Ruach. And then just go down to A7. And to each one is given the manifestation of the Ruach for profiting. For to one is giving a word of wisdom, so wisdom is a gift, through the Ruach, and to another one a word of knowledge, so knowledge is a gift of the Ruach, according to the same Ruach, and to another belief. There it is. So belief is a gift by the same Ruach. You see that? And to another belief by the same Ruach, and to another gifts of healing. Healing's a gift. Belief is a gift by the same Ruach. And to another, operations of powers, which is basically working of miracles, if you will. And to another, prophecy. Prophecy is a gift. And to another, discerning of Ruachs. Discernment of Ruachs is whether it's the spirit of truth or spirit of delusion is a gift. To be able to discern between good and evil is a gift. And to another, kinds of tongues, speaking in tongues is a gift. And to another, interpretation of tongues, to interpret what is being said by the Ruach through someone is a gift of interpretation. But one and the same Ruach works all these, distributing to each one individually as he intends. So there you go. Should be no doubt in your mind now that belief is a gift. Everybody seeing that? Okay. So Acts 13:48 is very powerful stuff, man. Very powerful stuff. And it's something that we all need to get a good understanding of what that's saying. And as many as had been appointed means predestined for a time into the future. Okay? It's not appointed that day. It's a prediction. It's a prophecy. It's in a different time, different age. You've been appointed, okay? Even if it's 1 hour, it would still be appointed into the future, but been appointed to everlasting life. Believed. So you can't believe no matter all the miracles and signs, people coming up out of the grave in front of you. You're not going to believe. It's not going to make a hoot of difference unless you've been appointed to everlasting life before the foundations of the world. So it's not up to you. I'm sorry. It's not. You don't get to choose whether you believe in the power of Yahushua's blood to deliver you or not. You don't. You don't get to believe anything, even in the existence of Yahuah, on your own or not. It's him who gives you the gift of belief. And he only gives it to those who have been appointed to everlasting life beforehand. Has to be beforehand. Has to be. Otherwise, it wouldn't be appointed now, would it? Yeah, if you need to get a handle on that one. That's extremely important stuff right there and very powerful. Okay, remember when we read Deuteronomy 30 about life and death? Look at 2 Peter 3. 2 Peter 3. 9. 2 Peter 3:9 says, Yahushua is not slow to regard to the promise. In regard to the promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward us, not wishing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Okay, so this choice happened before the foundations of the world. Yahuah knows who are his. And so this promise of life happened before the foundations of the world. Back in Deuteronomy 30, when he gave them that choice, he had already knew who was who was going to live, choose life, and who was going to choose death. And then he also commanded it. He said, therefore, you will choose life. Speaking of his chosen people. See that? Look at 2 Timothy 2:19. 2 Timothy 2:19 says, however, the solid foundation of Yahuah stands firm, having this seal. Yahuah knows those who are his. Yahuah knows those who are his. And let everyone who names the name of Mashiach turn away from wickedness. Listen to this. But in a large house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some to value and some to no value. If then anyone cleanses himself from these things, he shall be a vessel to value, having been set apart, of good use to the master, having been prepared for every good work. And flee from the lust of your youth, but pursue righteousness, belief, love, peace, with those calling on the master out of a clean heart. Okay, so he made people to either be a vessel for value or a vessel to no value. Okay, before he created anything, he knew who they would be. All right. When it says, and then anyone cleanses himself from these things, he shall be a vessel to value, having been set apart and of good to the master. He already knows who's going to clean himself, who's going to get immersed with the water and the ruach, and who are his chosen. He already knows. Okay, so what's this then? This is just that perception of free will, perception of perceiving of free will. Again, that's all that is. He already knows, because right up in the verse right up above it, he says that he created some to value and some to no value. He knows who they are. If the ones that are sinners go down and they change their life and they get immersed with the ruach in the water and the ruach, and they're reborn again, and they enter into the everlasting covenant, as it was predestined to do that. He knew that they were going to change halfway through their life, maybe at 50 or 60, they were going to change and do that, and they would end up receiving life. Okay, even though they were dead up to that point. And he knew that too. Look at 1 John. 1 John 2:19. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have stayed with us. But in order that it might be made manifest that none of them were of us. So there it is. So what's that saying? Well, they left. So they were doing good and they were with us till they were 56 years old, and then they left and became sinners, and so they perished, right? Well, Yahuah already knew that they were going to do that. He knew that they would be good for 60 years and then turn wicked and die, and they would be thrown into the lake of fire. Okay, and but in order that it might be manifest that none of them were of us. Okay, that means it becomes plain or clear when they turn that they weren't really of us, but they were just with us for a little while, basically. You see that? It's all predestined, man, no matter how you slice the pie. Okay. All right, so let's now look at Matthew 24:22. Matthew 24:22 says, "And if those days were not shortened, no flesh would be delivered. But for the sake of the chosen ones, those days shall be shortened." So here we go. Predestination again. He's speaking of the elect here, which means the election. Well, the election happened before the foundations of the earth was laid. So in the tribulation years, he's plainly making it clear here that the chosen ones or the election will still be on the earth through the wrath of Hashatan, otherwise known as the 3.5 years of tribulation. And for those people's sake that are still here, teaching others, giving others insight, and teaching them about the knowledge of Yahuah, for their sake, the days of the wrath of Hashatan or the tribulation years are going to be shortened. Otherwise, no flesh would be delivered. Satan would just totally destroy mankind. Okay, possibly all the animals too. Probably just a total nuclear disaster where all earth beings, all fleshly beings, anything that breathes air or whatever, died. It's such a huge nuclear disaster. But that's not going to happen. Yahuwah is going to cut those days short for the sake of who? The chosen ones, the elect. And that means the ones that were predestined to be with him, he's not going to allow Satan to destroy them, annihilate them with nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons, or anything else, because he's going to cut his days short. That's all predestination. If it wasn't, and it was free will, and everybody was just doing everything they wanted to do, no matter what, then it would probably be totally destroyed. But we can rest assured that it's not. Nobody gets to do just whatever they want to do, and whatever happens. It's not going to happen like that. So it's predestined that Yahushua's going to come back and cut the wrath of Hashatan, those tribulation years, short for the sake of the election or the chosen ones. So that should give you some reassurance, make you feel good about that. Okay, so good thing. Everything's predestined, right? Otherwise, maybe we'd all be in trouble. Good thing Yahuwah knows everything beforehand. If Yahuwah knows everything beforehand, we don't have a whole lot to worry about. We can just put our trust in Yahuwah and stay in our joy and our peace, which are also gifts from Yahuwah. All right, so Matthew 25:34 says, I'm going to back up to 31 so it makes a little bit more sense for you. Matthew 25:31 through 34. And when the Son of Adam comes in his esteem, and all the set apart messengers with him, then he shall sit on the throne of his esteem. Okay, so when he comes back to the earth on a white horse with all his messengers, the Malachim with him on white horses, coming back down the Mount of Olives to cut the days of Hashatan short. The wrath of Hashatan short, the tribulation years short. Okay, he'll come back and sit on the throne of his esteem. And all the nations shall be gathered before him, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on the right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the sovereign shall say to those on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the reign prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Wow. So there you go. From the foundation of the world means he knew who was going to inherit the reign of Yahuah from the foundation of the world. So on day one, when it says from the foundation of the world, that would be from day one. He knew who was going to inherit everlasting life. That's what that means. See that? All right, look at Romans 8. So Romans 8:28 through 33. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love Yahuah, to those who are called according to his purpose. Who were called according to his purpose. Because those whom he knew beforehand, there it is again. Because those whom he knew beforehand, he also established beforehand. That's predestination at its best right there. To be conformed to the likeness of his Son, for him to be the firstborn among many brothers, and whom he established beforehand, these he also called, and whom he called, these he also declared right, and whom he declared right, these he also esteemed. What then shall we say to this? If Yahuah is for us, who is against us? Truly, he who did not spare his own Son, but delivered him up on behalf of us all, how shall he not, along with him, freely give us all else? Who shall bring any charge against Yahuwah's chosen ones? It is Yahuah who is declaring right. That's plain as the nose on your face right there. That's amazing. Especially at verse 29. Because those whom he knew beforehand, he also established beforehand to be conformed to the likeness of his Son, for him to be the firstborn among many brothers. Wow, that's all. Beforehand, steps beforehand. If Yahuah, who's going to bring any charge against Yahuah's chosen ones? Who's going to say, no, he's not allowed to go in? You're not, because Yahuah says predestinate to happen. Chose that person to go in. Nobody can stop that. Nobody. Now, looking at Romans 9. Romans 9 may be the most important chapter of this evening's study, folks. And it definitely is probably or possibly the most controversial chapter in the quarrel or debate of free will versus predestiny. It's all right here in this chapter. And so let's get a look at it. Romans chapter 9. I speak the truth in Mashiach. I do not lie. My conscience also bearing me witness in the Ruach HaKodesh, that I have great sadness and continual grief in my heart. For I myself could have wished to be banished from Mashiach for the sake of my brothers, my relatives according to the flesh, who are Israelites, whose is the adoption and the esteem and the covenants and the giving of the Torah and the worship and the promises, whose are the fathers, and from whom is the Mashiach according to the flesh, who is over all. Yahuah, blessed forever. Amen. However, it is not as though the word of Yahuah has failed, for they are not all Israel who are of Israel. Neither are they all children because they are the seed of Abraham. But in Yitzchak your seed shall be called. That is, those who are the children of the flesh. These are not the children of Yahuah, but the children of the promise are reckoned as the seed. For this is the word of promise. At this time I shall come, and Sarah shall give a son, and shall have a son. And not only so, but Rachel, having conceived by one, our father Yitzchak, yet before they were born or had done any good or evil, in order that the purpose of Yahuah, according to choice, might stand, not of works, but of him who calls. See that? It was said to her, the greater shall serve the lesser. As it has been written, Jacob I have loved, but Esau I have hated. What then shall we say? Is there unrighteousness with Yahuah? Let it not be. For he says to Moses, I shall favor whomever I favor, and I shall have compassion on whomever I have compassion. Now, he said that in Exodus 33:19 to Moses. So then it is not of him who is wishing, nor of him who is running, but of Yahuah who shows favor. See that? So you cannot, this is not free will. Nothing you can do. It's up to Yahuah, whoever he favors and has compassion on, who will have life. He chooses who will have life, and he chose who will have death. It's pretty clear here, man. It's not up to us at all. Not up to the ones wishing, nor who is running, but of Yahuah, who shows the favor. For the scripture says to Pharaoh, which we read earlier, for this same purpose I have raised you up, to show my power in you, and that my name be declared in all the Arets. So then he favors whom he wishes, and he hardens whom he wishes. Then you shall say to me, why does he still find fault? For who has resisted his counsel? And so what's going on here is it's pretty clear at this point, very clear, that everything's predestined by Yahuah. There's no free will. It's all up to Yahuah. Yahuah decides who believes and who doesn't believe, who chooses life and who chooses death, who is delivered and who is not. It's all up to Yahuah. It's already played out. It's planned out. It's coming to pass. He spoke it. He's doing it. See what I'm saying? It's clear now. And so now Paul's saying here, okay, since we have determined that there's no free will, but there's only Yahuwah's will, then you shall say to me, why does he still find fault for who has resisted his counsel? So his counsel does stand. That's what it said, 46:10. Remember that? So if it's predestined, then, why should we have to worry about anything? We just go nuts and whatever we want. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen according to Yahuwah's will. We have nothing to do with it, right? Remember we were talking about that earlier, and this is Paul's addressing that exact scenario right here. Why does he still find fault for who has resisted his counsel? But who are you, O man, to talk back to Yahuah. Shall that which is formed say to him who formed it, why have you made me like this? Right. Why have you made me like this to choose death? Why have you made me to be a sinner? Why have you made me to fall away? Why have you made me a goat? Right? Or vice versa. Why have you given him life? I'm a better person than he is. You know, I shine my shoes and wear suits and cut my beard. Look at him. He has a beard and t-shirt, and his shoes ain't shiny. He wears old cowboy boots. Does not the potter have authority over the clay? From the same lump to make one vessel for value and another not for value? Yeah, we just read that he does that. He chooses the vessel for value, which is us, or the vessel not to value, which is the sinners. Okay, so we're considered vessels. And if Yahuah, because our inner man is in this vessel, this tent, and if Yahuah, desiring to show wrath and to make his power known, with much patience tolerated the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction, those who are going to be thrown into the lake of fire, he was patient with them, allowed them to breathe. He sustained them, returned their breath as well, right? And fed them, clothed them as well, sometimes more abundantly even. Probably because he feels sorry for them because they're getting their reward now in this matrix, this carbon-copied world. And they're not going to see everlasting life and what he has prepared for those who love him in everlasting life. You probably feel sorry for them. That's why you see the poor people, not poor people, evil people, wicked people, having so much in this life. And that he might make known the riches of his esteem on vessels of compassion, which he had prepared beforehand. See that? Which he had prepared beforehand, before he created anything else, for esteem. He prepared them beforehand for esteem, even whom he called, not only us of the Yehudim, but also of the nations. Yes, of the nations. And he says in Husha 2, I shall call them my people who were not my people, and her beloved who was not beloved. That's Ephraim sown into the nations, folks. And it shall be in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people. There they shall be called sons of the living Yahuah. Wow. And Yashayahu cries out on behalf of Yisrael, though the number of the children of Yisrael be as the sand of the sea, the remnant shall be delivered. For he is bringing a matter to an end and is cutting it short in righteousness. And whose righteousness? Yahusha's righteousness, not ours. We don't have any righteousness. Because Yahusha shall cut short a matter on the Yeretz. And as Yashayahu said before, if Yahuah Zaboeth had not left us a seed, we would have become like Sodom, and we would have been made like Amorah, totally destroyed. So the seed is Yahusha, the seed of Abraham. What shall we say then? The nations not following after righteousness, which is Yahusha, have obtained righteousness, have obtained Yahusha, even the righteousness of belief, the righteousness of Yahusha's blood. So when belief came, that was Yahusha's sacrifice, blood sacrifice for the remission of sins, removal of sins, intentional and unintentional, all sins permanently. And so belief in Yahusha's blood, you don't have to go out and sacrifice anything. There's no more bloodshed, no more blood offerings, no more sacrifices to be done. He did it one time permanently. Doesn't have to be any repeating of sacrifices or anything. You just have to believe in that one-time sacrifice of from the blood of the Lamb of Yahuah. See that? That's what righteousness of belief is. Not belief in the existence of Yahusha, but the belief in his blood sacrifice as being a one-time permanent offering forever. But Israel, following after the Torah of righteousness, has not arrived at the Torah of righteousness. Why? Because it was not of belief. They believed in animal blood sacrifices. They didn't have any power. They didn't believe in the sacrifice of Yahusha's blood, which had all power. See that? But as by the works of Torah, which was the old priesthood, animal blood sacrifices, not the moral laws that define sin. For they stumbled at the stone of stumbling, which was Yahusha, belief in the one-time permanent blood sacrifice of the Lamb of Yahuah. That's what they believed in. The ones that were working the works of the Torah, the old priesthood, were believing in the blood of animals to cover their sin for a year, temporarily, and then they'd have to do it again. Unless they committed the sin again, and they already knew it was a sin, then they were in big trouble because animal blood only covered up unintentional sin. It was not of belief, but as works of Torah, for they stumbled in at the stone of stumbling. And as it had been written, see, I lay in Zion a stone of stumbling and a rock that makes for falling. And everyone who is believing on him shall not be put to shame. So there we go. Yahusha shed his own blood for us, as in John 1:5. And we know the Ruach HaKodesh purchased us with his blood, which is stated in Acts 20:28. Okay, so this works of Torah, believing in animal blood sacrifices to temporarily cover up their sin, versus the Torah of righteousness, which is the righteousness of belief in the blood of the Lamb of Yahuah, which took away all sin forever, for all time. See what I'm saying? Okay, so this is not speaking of free will here, folks, at all, but Yahuwah's will, as he clearly states, and gives you an example in 9:17 of that, for the scripture says to Pharaoh, for this same purpose I have raised you up to show my power in you, and that my name be declared in all the Eretz. So Pharaoh had no say-so. He was just living out, performing exactly what he was born to perform. That was decided upon beforehand, before the foundations of the world, what he would do with his life and why he was born. That's not free will, folks. All right. So there you go. That, to me, debunks free will. Romans chapter 9. If you didn't see that, go ahead and reread it yourself over and over and over again if you have to. All right, so Ephesians 3:5 here, especially verse 4. Blessed be the Yahuwah and Father of our Master Yahushua Mashiach, who has blessed us with every Ruach-like blessing in the heavenlies in Mashiach, even as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be Kadesh, or set apart and blameless before him in love, having previously established us to adoption as sons through Yahushua Mashiach to himself, according to the good pleasure of his desire. So there you go, man. That's pretty clear right there. He chose us before the foundations of the world, man. And it's very interesting here, because Paul is actually indicating that the time of the believer's election was before the foundation of the world. So Yahuah knew, chosen and knew who are his before he created anything. This is a very powerful passage right here. Now look down here at that same chapter, Ephesians 1-11 through 14. In whom also we did obtain an inheritance, being previously established. Previously established means predestined. It's the same thing. According to the purpose of him, working all things according to the counsel of his desire. Remember, that was in Genesis 46:10. Let's go back now. I think this is a good time to go back to Isaiah 46:10 and recount what that says. So we're hearing all these different things spoken here now. Now remember this and show yourselves men. Turn it back, you transgressors. Remember the former events of old. For I am all, and there is no one else. Elohim, and there is no one like me, declaring the end from the beginning of his creation, and from of old that which has not yet been done, saying, my counsel does stand. So see that? So over here, back over here now, Ephesians 1:11, it says, according to the counsel of his desire. See that? Counsel of his desire. So my counsel does stand, and in all my delight I do, calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a distant land. Indeed, I have spoken it, I also bring it to pass. I have planned it, I also do it. So there you go. See how that fits? Being previously established, which means predestined, according to the purpose of him working all things according to the counsel of his desire, for us to be the praise of his esteem, those having first trusted in Mashiach, in whom you also, having heard the word of truth, the Besorah of your deliverance, in whom also, having believed, you were sealed with the Ruach HaKodesh of promise. Now, see that? So the Besorah of the deliverance, in whom also, having believed, who believed? Those who were appointed to everlasting life believed. So all they had to do is, having heard the word of truth, the Besorah of deliverance, they believed. They didn't have to see all those miracle signs and wonders. People raised from the dead. Why? Because they were appointed to everlasting life. And they believed. That's all they had to do, is hear the word of truth. It tells you right there. It tells you that. Having heard the word of truth, the Besorah of your deliverance, and whom also having believed. See that? Now, if they weren't appointed to everlasting life before the foundations of the world, they had no choice in the matter, did they? And if they weren't, it didn't matter. They could hear this entire Besorah, the entire word of truth spoken in their ears. They could see all those miracles Yahushua performed, and they still would not believe, even if the dead was raised in front of their eyeballs. Why? Because they were not appointed to everlasting life before the foundations of the earth. Predestined to live in eternity with Yahuah. It's his chosen. They were appointed to vessels of destruction, man, to go into the lake of fire and experience the second death. Who is the pledge of our inheritance? Oh, you were sealed with the Ruach HaKodesh of promise, who is the pledge of our inheritance until the redemption of the purchased possession, to the praise of his esteem. Okay, so look at that. You were sealed with the Ruach HaKodesh of promise. Look at Ephesians 4:30. So 4:30 says, And do not grieve the Ruach HaKodesh of Yahuah, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. See that? Speaking over here, who is the pledge of our inheritance until the redemption of the purchased possession, due the praise of his esteem. Look at Acts 20:28. So Acts 20:28 says, therefore take heed to yourselves and to all the flock, among which the Ruach HaKodesh has made you overseers, to shepherd the assembly of Elohim, which he has purchased with his own blood. There you go. Purchased with his own blood. See that? So there you go. Who is a pledge in our inheritance. So the Ruach HaKodesh, when you're immersed with the Ruach HaKodesh, that's a pledge or a promise of your inheritance that you're going to be delivered, that you were chosen. You are one of the chosen until the redemption of the purchased possession, which is you. You were purchased, a purchased possession. You were purchased with the blood of the Ruach HaKodesh. And then when he comes back at his second coming, he's going to come back and redeem you. He's going to come back and claim his property, claim his wife, which is you. And he is paid for beforehand with the blood, with his own blood, the Ruach HaKodesh's blood. So why did the Ruach HaKodesh have to manifest into a human being? In order to have the blood to spill, in order to purchase his treasured possession or his bride, which he will come back and redeem her, claim her at his second coming, and resurrect you that day. Will be resurrected. If you fell asleep, if you remain, you'll be caught up into the clouds with the first resurrection and meet him in the sky on his white horse with all the Malachim on white horses as he descends down upon the Mount of Olives. And then there'll be a great earthquake and he'll cut the days of Hashatan short. The tribulation years short. That happens at the end of the tribulation years, not before it and not in the middle of it, but at the end. And it's not a rapture. It's his second coming and the first resurrection, which happens at his second coming. Okay? See all that? So, I mean, wow. This is wild stuff, man. Especially verse 4. Even as he chose us in him, everything's in him, and he's in everything. You have to be. Nothing can be outside of Yahuah. Nothing. Yahuah is the perimeter of life. Everything's in him, and he's in everything, and Yahuah is everything. If anything that's outside of Yahuah doesn't exist, that's the outer darkness, which means non-existence. Can't be there. Nothing's there. Nothing exists outside of Yahuah. He's the perimeter of life. He's the light, which is life. From the light comes life. He shares his life with us. If you're not in him, how can he share his life with you? How can you be in his light? You can't. You'll be in darkness. And at the end, you'll be in the outer darkness, which is non-existence. Okay, look at Colossians 1:15. Colossians 1:15 says, who is in the likeness of the invisible Yahuah, the firstborn of all creation. That's the word. That's who that is. That's Yahusha. The firstborn of all creation. He was the body of light for Yahuah. He indwelled his body of light. And that body of light sat on the throne. When you see the one person, the one Elohim sitting on the one throne, okay, you're seeing his body. But Yahuah never gives up his omnipotence to sit on that throne. He's still everywhere at once, all the time, and everything is in him, and he's in everything all the time at once. Never does he have to leave one place to go to another. So who are we seeing sitting on the throne? His body. That's who, the word, his body, the firstborn of all creation. That's who sits on the throne. That's who we can physically see with our eyes. That's why he made a body so that we could see him. Otherwise, no one has ever seen Elohim. He's Ruach. So if you look at the throne and nobody's sitting on there, then his body's somewhere else. It's not on the throne. But Yahuwah's still on the throne. You just can't see him. Why is he still on the throne? Because he's everywhere at once all the time. He doesn't have to live in one place to go to another place. That's the greatness of Yahuwah. That's the power of Yahuwah. That's how we define him. It's the only way we can define him. All-knowing, everywhere at once all the time, and all-powerful. There's nothing Yahuwah cannot do. He can do everything, anything and everything. Nothing is out of bounds for Yahuwah. Okay, firstborn of all creation, because through him were created all that are in the Shemayim and that are on the Eretz, visible and invisible, whether thrones, rulership, or principalities, or authorities, all have been created through him and for him. Obviously, then, he was inside of the firstborn of all creation. The first thing he created was his body of light, and Yahuwah was indwelling his body as he created everything and formed everything while he was in his body, which, yes, had eyes, ears, mouth, and hands, and feet, and legs, and a back, and a body, just like ours. And he is before all, and in him all hold together. And he is the head of the body, the assembly, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that he might become the one who was first in all. Because in him all the fullness was well pleased to dwell, and through him to completely restore to favor all to himself, whether on the Eretz or in the Shemayim, having made peace through the blood of his stake. There you go. He was slain before the foundations of the world. We can see that in Revelations 13:8. So let's go there. Revelations 13:8 says, and all those dwelling on the Eretz, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain Lamb from the foundation of the world, shall worship him. Speaking of the beast. So there you go. The Lamb was slain before the foundations of the world. Keep in mind, Yahuwah never gives up his omnipotence, ever. So he only plays different roles at different locations around the world or in the Shemayim, wherever he wants. He can play 1,000,000 roles. He can play 3 roles. He can play 2 roles. For an example, Yahuwah played the Father. Yahuwah played the role of the Son. Yahuwah played the role of the Ruach HaKodesh while he was dealing with people. But never did give up his omnipotence. He was always everywhere at once all the time. And why did he do that? In order to communicate with the mind of the flesh. That's why. Look at 2 Timothy 2:19. I think we already did that. Yeah, Yahuwah knows those who are his. So there you go. And then, let's see, we did that one. We did this one. Let's look at Revelations 19:10. So Revelations 19:10 says, and I fell at his feet to worship him. But he said to me, see, do not do it. I am your fellow servant and of your brothers who possess the witness of Yahusha. Worship Yahuwah. For the witness of Yahusha is the Ruach of prophecy. So there you go. Now look. Prophecy is a prediction. It's an appointed time. It's something that's going to happen in the future. It has not happened yet, but it will come to pass, right? Because Yahuwah had ordained it to happen, right? He spoke it, he planned it, and it's going to come to pass. There's no doubt about that, okay? And so just the fact that the witness of Yahuwah is the Ruach of prophecy, which means that he knows all, okay? He knows everything's going to happen in any time period of these existence, everlasting, or even within the end and the beginning of his delusion here, this matrix, means that it's all predestined. It has to be predestined. If it's his testimony that he says it's going to happen, it has to happen exactly the way he said it's going to happen. So the witness of Yahusha is the Ruach of prophecy. That right there is telling you if everything's prophesied and ordained, prophesied, predicted, planned, it's going to come to pass, that there's no free will. There's only Yahuwah's will. If men had free will, they could interfere with Yahuwah's will, and then the witness of Yahusha, which is the Ruach of prophecy, could be messed up. The men could mess it up and change it because of their crazy free will, wanting to do it their way and not Yahuwah's way. They would be able to do that. And since men cannot do that other than perception, perceiving that they can do it, but remember what Scripture told us, okay? Joseph's brothers thought they were doing this evil thing for revenge on the brother, but really it wasn't them doing it at all. It was Yahuwah doing it for the good, to save the lives of many people. So it was just a perception. See that? So men may think they can do that, and they have the free will to do that and change things, but when they do things and try to change things and make other things happen, okay, change history and everything, make things go the way they want it to go, all they're really doing is Yahuwah's will. Yahuwah knew they would do that, and so they were born to do that so that his will would be accomplished. It's really that simple. There's no really debate here, folks. It's just straight Yahuwah's will, and his will be done one way or the other. He can use men to try to force to do something that they perceive as free will for evil, and turn it around and make their action to work out for his good. Because, like I said in the beginning, the perception of free will for mankind, for the flesh, is necessary. And I think it helps Yahuwah out as well, and for his delight and his joy. So look at Revelations 20:12. So 20:12 says, "And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before the throne, and scrolls were opened, and another scroll was opened, which is of life. And the dead were judged from what was written in the scrolls according to their works." Okay, now look over at 15. "And if anyone was not found written in the scroll of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire." So there you go. So whether they're written in there, blotted out from there, whatever, Yahuwah's will is going to be done. Okay, there's just written in there who's going to be delivered and who ain't. And the scroll was opened. So this scroll, I don't think was made minute by minute. It was all written exactly what was going to happen before the foundations of the earth. Look at Revelations 21:27. And there shall by no means enter into it whatever is unclean, neither anyone doing abomination and falsehood, but only those who are written in the Lamb's scroll of life. So it sounds like to me then there's life and death has already been decided upon here. The scroll of life must have been written beforehand. Look at Revelation 17:8. So 17:8 says, the behemoth that you saw was and is not and is about to come out of the pit of the deep and goes to the destruction. And those all dwelling on the earth whose names are not written in the scroll of life from the foundation of the world shall marvel when they see the behemoth that was and is not and yet is. You see that? So it says here, whose names are not written in the scroll of life from the foundations of the earth, is going to take the mark of the beast. All right, it's going to worship the beast. See that? For the foundations of the world. So that means that those, the names that are written in the book of life are those who were chosen before the foundations of the earth, right? I mean, that's only common sense, has to be. See what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. The scroll of life was written before foundations of the world. It was, so in that case, then it's all predestined. It has to be. In Revelations 17:8 totally backs that up. I mean, look at Revelations 3:5. Revelations 3:5 says, and you know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him there is no sin. He was manifested to take away our sins, and in him there is no sin. Okay, and it was all predestined, you know, for him to come at a certain point in time and take away those sins. You see that? So there was a date for him, assigned to him, appointed to him to come, okay, and take away the sins. That's what I'm saying. So let me see now. Look at Philippians 4:3. And I also ask you, true companion, help these women who labored with me in the Basora, with Clemus also, and the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the Sefer of Life. Rejoice in Yahuah always. Again, I say, rejoice. So there you go. Whose names are written in the Sefer of Life. So they must be pre-written. Goes along with Revelation 17:8. And so it don't sound like you get to earn your way into the book of life, folks. It sounds to me like your name was written in there. If you're going to receive everlasting life, if you were appointed everlasting life and believe before the foundations of the world. And those whose name was not written in the scroll of the Lamb's book of life before the foundations of the earth will be thrown into the lake of fire, which is the second death, where there will be weeping and gnashing of the teeth, folks. It sounds like predestination to me. Okay, so now let's look at, go back to John 15:16 one time. So John 15:16 clearly says, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you. See that? And appointed you. Remember what we read in Acts 13:48. You're appointed to everlasting life. And appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should endure, so that whatever you ask in my Father, you ask the Father in my name, he might give you. So there you go. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you, that you should go and bear fruit. So not only were you appointed everlasting life to believe, but also you were appointed with your take your belief and go collect fruit, or wake up to find the lost sheep. And they hear the words of the Besorah coming out of your mouth into their ear. It will wake them up, and they will believe because they were appointed to everlasting life. And that's who we're out looking for. We're out looking for the lost sheep of Yisrael. See that? So you got to do your job. You're appointed to everlasting life to believe, but you're also appointed to go collect fruit, find the lost sheep that Yahuah sowed into the nations and scattered to all four corners of the earth. So you got to perform your duties. Okay? All right, so that brings us up to the last thing here, the end of the study this evening. And I'm going to wrap this up by reading a couple of the Psalms here. Psalms 139, if you will. No matter what, you got to understand that no matter if Yahuah uses men through their perceived free will in order to accomplish his will, or if his will is done by him directly, it don't matter how he does it. But the end results is there's nothing left. The bottom line, the end results, the bottom line is Yahuwah's will be done. Period. Doesn't matter how he achieves that, like he did with Joseph being sold, like he did with Pharaoh, and the other examples we just went through. No matter. It's still his will being done. Let's look at Psalms 139. O Yahuah, you have searched me and know me. You know my setting down and my rising up. You understand my thought from afar. You sift my path and my lying down, and know well all my ways. For there is not a word on my tongue. But see, O Yahuah, you know it all. You know it all. You have closed me in behind and before, and laid your hand upon me. Knowledge too wondrous for me. It is high. I am unable to reach it. Where would I go from your ruach? Or where would I flee from your face? If I go up into the Shemayim, you are there. If I make my bed in the grave, see, you are there. I take the wings of the morning. I dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea. There, too, your hand would lead me, and your right hand hold me. If I say, darkness shall cover me, then Leah would be light to me. Even darkness is not dark for you, but Leah shines as the Yam. As is darkness, so is light. For you possess my inwards. You have covered me in my mother's womb. I give thanks to you, for I am awesomely and wondrously made. Wonders are your works, and my being knows it well. My bones was not concealed from you when I was shaped in a hidden place, knit together in the depths of the arats. Your eyes saw my unformed body, and in your book all of them were written, the days they were formed, while none was among them. And how precious are your thoughts to me, all How great has been the sum of them. If I should count them, they would be more than the sand. When I wake up, I am still with you. Oh, that you would slay the wrong. Allah. Depart from me, therefore, men of bloodshed. They speak against you wickedly. Bring your enemies to oblivion. Yahuah, do I not hate them who hate you? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? With a complete hatred, I hate them. They have become my enemies. Search me all and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if an idolatrous way is in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Wow. Amen. All right, we'll wrap it up with Psalms 51 then. What a powerful song that is, huh? That's something else. Psalms 139. Psalms 51, folks. We'll wrap it up. Show me favor, Elohim, according to your kindness, according to the greatness of your passion. Blot out my crimes. Wash me completely from my guilt, and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my crimes, and my sin is ever before me. Against you, you alone, have I sinned, and done evil in your eyes, that you might be proven right in your words. Be clear when you judge. See, I was brought forth in crookedness, and in sin my mother conceived me. See, you have desired truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part you make me know wisdom. Cleanse me with hyssop, and I am clean. Wash me, and I am whiter than snow. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice. Hide your face from my sins, and blot out all my crookednesses. Create in me a clean heart, O Elohim, and renew a steadfast ruach within me. Do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your Ruach HaKodesh from me. Restore to me the joy of your deliverance, and uphold me, noble Ruach. Let me teach transgressors your ways, so that sinners turn back to you. Deliver me from blood guilt, Elohim. Elohim of my deliverance, let my tongue sing aloud of your righteousness. Yahuah, open my lips, and that my mouth declare your praise. For you do not desire slaughtering, or I would give it. And you do not delight in burnt offering. The slaughtering of Elohim are a broken ruach, a heart broken and crushed, Elohim. These you do not despise. Do good in your good pleasure to Zion. Build the walls of Jerusalem. Then you delight in slaughterings of righteousness and burnt offering and complete burnt offering. Then young bulls would be offered on your altar. Amen. All right, that's a wrap in tonight's study. I just want to very quickly here do just a recap for y'all. I want you to see this clear as possible now. Go back to Ephesians 1. Oh, man. So Ephesians 1, 3 through 5. You may want to mark these verses down and revisit them later. Ephesians 1, 3 through 5 says, Blessed be the Yahuah and Father of our Master Yahushua, Mashiach, who has blessed us with every Ruach-like blessing in the heavenlies in Mashiach, even as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be set apart and blameless before him in love, having previously established us to adoption as sons through Yahushua Mashiach to himself, according to the good pleasure of his desire. You now go to Acts 13:48. Acts 13:48. And when the nations heard this, they were glad and praised the word of Yahuwah. And as many as had been appointed to everlasting life believed. And then back again now to Isaiah 46, 8 through 13. Remember this and show yourselves men. Turn it back, you transgressors. Remember the former events of old. For I am all, and there is no one else. Elohim. And there is no one like me, declaring the end from the beginning. And from of old, that which has not yet been done, saying, My counsel does stand, and all my delight I do. Calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a distant land. Indeed, I have spoken it, I also bring it to pass. I have planned it, I also do it. This is obviously, by looking at these three passages, is telling us this is Yahuwah's will be done, not our will. Okay. Yahuwah's righteousness is our righteousness. We don't have our own righteousness. We don't have our own fruits. Our fruits are bad fruit, rotten fruit. Okay. His righteousness, his good fruits, and his esteem all belong to him. And when the Ruach HaKodesh immerses us, and then it appears to others that we're a light in the darkness, and they see his righteousness and his fruit and his esteem through us, and it draws, and his kindness for us draws other men to him. So in other words, we humans may perceive we are obedient, and we're able to choose life and death, and to be obedient or to backslide, fall away, and be evil. But really, it's not true. It is Yahuwah in us. That is who is obedient. That is who is righteous. That is who's producing good fruit. It's his righteousness. It's Yahuwah in us. Okay? Not ours. So give all esteem to Yahuwah forever and ever. Amen. Okay, so I know that a lot of you are probably still having a little bit of a hard time swallowing this perception of human free will. It really is Yahuwah's will, and we can't do nothing about it. Like I said, this is more of for us to understand the knowledge of Yahuwah than it is to prove somebody right or wrong. That's not what this is all about at all. Okay. But to gain the knowledge of Yahuwah is very beneficial for all of us. And so this is why we spoke these words tonight. But we can go to Hosea. Go to Hosea 3, 6:3. It says, "So let us know, and let us pursue to know Yahuwah." And that's what this is all about. So let us know, and let us pursue to know Yahuwah through his word of truth, and understand it's important for us to understand that it's Yahuwah's will be done on this eretz as it is in the heaven. Okay. And the things that his will in heaven are good things. There's no disease up there. There's no poor people. There's no murdering. There's nothing going on up there other than the fallen angels when they started trouble and Satan. But you see what I'm getting at? So his will up there comes down here, and then there's goodwill and a better place for us humans to be if we will only yield to his will and just let his will be on the eretz as it is in the heaven. You see what I'm saying? Instead of saying, "Oh, we got free will to do whatever we want here. This belongs to us. We can go nuts, do whatever we want." Now, that's the only reason that's happening is because it's Yahuwah's will that you do that, and so that he's going to prove that you're a vessel that were made for destruction, and you're going to throw it into the lake of fire. That's all I can say to you. The proof that you are a vessel a treasured possession, a good vessel, is that you have the Ruach HaKodesh in you, so it becomes vital for us to have the Ruach HaKodesh. Okay? But that's a very important thing right there. So let us know and let us pursue to know Yahuwah. That's what we're doing this evening. We're trying to know him better so we can have a better, closer relationship with our Creator, and that we can yield to his will and just say, Yahuwah, who am I to question you? Who am I, to talk back to you, man? Your will be done. It's your creation. You did it for your delight, for your joy and your enjoyment, for your entertainment. Your will be done. Please remember me when you come into your kingdom. So, Yahuwah is all-knowing. He's omnipotent. Okay, and in order for us to remain, for that definition to remain, and for us to understand that, then we need to understand that everything in this universe, and including us humans, are just simply playing out his plan, what he has planned out to happen and chose to happen. And our free will is just an illusion. It's just a perception of free will. It's not, there's nothing we can do to change anything. So we just yield totally to Yahuwah. His will be done on earth as it is in heaven, and trust in him, okay, to fulfill his promise. Otherwise, we better start redefining him right now. If we can interfere, if we have free will to interfere with Yahuwah's plan, then he can't be all-knowing or all-powerful. He must be immutable, because men's going to change up everything that he planned. His plan won't even be recognized. By the time we get done with it, we'll change it so much. Right? So we need to come to that understanding. No matter how Yahuwah's will gets done, whether it's through someone who's acting evilly or whatever, it's all going to come out for the good for us, his chosen, that was chosen before the foundations of the earth, was appointed to everlasting life to believe. So Yahuwah remains omnipotent or all-knowing and immutable, which means he does not change, which means his knowledge is timeless. Yahuwah's knowledge is timeless, folks. In other words, Yahuwah knows all that has happened, all that is happening, and all that will happen forever, for everlasting, from everlasting to everlasting. Therefore, if Yahuwah knows timelessly that a person will, what a person will perform, they will perform such and such of an action, or chose then, or to choose to change history, or one of Yahuah's prophecies or something, we'll say, then it is impossible. It would be impossible for that person to perform that action if Yahuah is, in fact, his knowledge is timeless and he remains omnipotent and immutable. See that? So it's possible for that person not to perform that, not to perform an action if it's Yahuah's will. Like Judas, for an example, he couldn't perform. He had to perform the action. Okay, and what was amazing about it is Satan came into him. Okay, and then so Satan worked the evil through Judas, similar to the serpent, when Satan entered the serpent and worked the evil through the serpent. To who? To Adam and Yahuah, the first Adam. When Satan, the old serpent, entered into Judas, the betrayer, he worked the evil through him to the second Adam, fulfilling prophecy in Genesis. Between the intimacy between your seed and her seed. You see that? And yes, Satan is the old serpent, the dragon of old. He's the dragon, the old serpent. And yes, he was in the Garden of Eden. It wasn't an animal that did that. It was Satan possessing that animal to deceive the first Adam and Yahuah. Together, they called them Adam. Yahuah saw them as Adam, together as one, the first Adam. And then he went into Judas, okay, and the betrayer, and betrayed the second Adam. You see that? Fulfilling that prophecy. Okay, so so Judas, it was impossible for Judas not to perform that action because he was born to perform that action. So then there can only be a perception of free will, at least at the human level, here on this carbon-copied world. So here's a thought. Prophecy could not exist without predestination. Prophecy could not exist without predestination. Yet, in Revelations 19:10, it says he knew that some would be in the book of life, then removed and lost. So therefore, this is proof we do not have free will or choice, but on the contrary, we have the perception of free will while we live here on this carbon-copied world in this delusion. If Pharaoh or Judas or Pilate or Herod or any of them could have done anything different, they would have. That is why it says what it says in Revelations 22:11. And we'll look at it. Revelations 22:11 says, he who does wrong, let him do more wrong. He who is filthy, let him be more filthy. He who is righteous, let him be more righteous. He who is set apart, let him be more set apart. And see, I am coming speedily, and my reward is with me to give to each according to his work. So what's that saying, man? I mean, you can't change it. So be the best you can do what you were assigned to do. That's what that is saying. So if you're wrong, be more wrong. Be the best you can be. If you're filthy, be more filthy. Be the best person you can be playing that part, that role that you were assigned to before the foundations of the world. If you're righteous, be more righteous. Be as righteous as possible. Living in Mashiach, yielding to Mashiach. He was set apart, let him be more set apart. Be even more set apart from this world, from your fleshly body, from the lust of the eyes. Be more set apart. See what I'm saying? So you can't change because it's predestined. So you can't, if you're assigned to be filthy, you can't be unfilthy. So just be as filthy as you can. Play the part as hard as you can because you can't change it. You're stuck. No matter what you want to do, that's your part and that's what you're going to play. So play it well. That's what that's saying. It proves predestination, folks. So anyway, I hope you all learned as much as I did this evening with this study. It's been a really powerful study. And last thing I want you to do is take this knowledge and run out and say, well, it don't matter. If I'm just going to go crazy. If you do that, then that's just your destiny to do that. Okay. There's nothing I can do about it or you. But hopefully you're not taking any of this that way, but you're understanding that we have increased our knowledge in Yahuah and who Yahuah is and how powerful he truly is. Okay. And who you're messing with. And so we all have this weird little tendency to try to make Yahuah be like us, bring him down to our level. You just can't do that. He's beyond anything that we can even imagine. And so he soars at heights that we can't even imagine. He travels through dimensions, realms. He's not restricted by the tenses. Past, present, and future means nothing to him. Those are our restrictions, not his. They're his creation, our restrictions. Time, same thing. He's not pressed by time. Infinity doesn't even come into his realm, his play, his wheelhouse. Infinity is his creation as well. It lies somewhere between everlasting and everlasting, and someday we'll pass infinity. Those of us who are appointed to everlasting life. And so he's magnificent. He's awesome. He's truly shows favor and compassion to whoever he wants. His kindness and his love attracts men. So talk about that, his kindness and his love. That's what attracts men to him. I can't even have the words really to describe him or try to define him to you. He's just way beyond our minds. We're so limited compared to what he is. I would just like to say, don't restrict him, don't define him, don't try to trap him within the covers of the authorized version. Don't try to, or any other Bible or translation. He taught so much more and did so much more that's written in scriptures or Netzarim writings that all the if everything was written down, all the books, the world could not contain all the books. And so how can you contain him within the covers of the Bible? You can't. So stop doing that, Stop trying to bring him down to our level and make him like us. Don't do that. Yahuah doesn't like that when you do that, by the way. So I guess that's going to be a wrap, folks. Don't forget about tomorrow. We're still in, we're in Yahuah 20. We'll possibly finish Yahuah tomorrow. Maybe not. We'll see how it goes. If not, that's fine. We'll finish it the following week, but next week. But we'll see how it goes. If you've never been on the Netzarim website, our scriptural study group, we have them on Shabbat at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on this same channel. It's a live broadcast, and everybody participates in the chat room, and we can get 10 people on the StreamYard, the live broadcast on StreamYard, and to participate and read scriptures and study scriptures and so forth and so on. We've been in Yahuah now for quite a few weeks, and we're just not getting to the end of it. Be chapter 20 tomorrow, possibly finish with 21. Then we're going to go into Luke, which even has more chapters. So if you weren't able to be with us as we studied Yahuah together, you may want to come in next week, or the week after that. And we're going to be starting a whole new study in the book of Luke. And so you might not want to miss that. Yahuah been a wonderful, very enlightening study. And I know I gained a lot of new knowledge about Yahuah as we studied through Yahuah. And so it's very good. Very good. All right. So join us tomorrow. Be there or be square. And remember to stay in love with Yahushua HaMashiach. Thanks for coming, everyone. Enjoyed your company. Appreciate you studying with me more than you'll ever know. Peace, love, joy to everybody. So long, Netzarim, beloved of Yahuah. So long, everyone. See you next week.